Let's adjust a few things to start the live stream. We'll start in a little while. I think it's okay. Let me see if it's centered properly. It looks like it's okay. We'll start today's live stream in a little while. I'm going to try to mix a lot of topics together. It's a complaint some researchers make to me, and they're right, aren't they? Every research project requires you to narrow down the topics. And I usually like to expand, 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 never close down. My idea is never to close down, always expand. So that people can develop a more flexible conscience, then they become less prone to accepting dogmas. Use belief, use faith, but it's not limited to, it's not, it boils down to being a belief or a faith. That's my idea. And belief and faith aren't religious terms for me. Belief and faith are precisely in science, in truths, in politics, in society, anything in between. Just a minute, we're just getting started in today's life right now. Okay, it's 8 p.m. We're in Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade is Greater Miami in the city of Aventura. So we're in the city of Aventura in Miami-Dade. Today is February 11th, 2026. Our live stream today is titled Freedom of Expression in the Completeness of Movement. Look how wonderful that is. Freedom of regarding freedom of expression, and that's so important in the completeness of the movement. We're going to try to address a lot of things here, a lot of things, and we're going to try to give you a way to draw energy from your body through movement. We're going to open up a lot of ideas, and I'm going to start talking to you before opening up a lot of ideas. Basically, I'm going to talk about DNA today, interoception, proprioception, which we've been talking about a lot. DNA when it goes to the structure, to make body structure, DNA when it performs functions. So, function structure, we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about some movements to release energy from your body. First, we're going to talk about something interesting, a sheet of paper. Look at this sheet of paper. I'll explain to you what a cutout is. Look at this sheet of paper. Science, in order to pass on knowledge to people, needs to make cutouts. This sheet of paper, I could make many cutouts with it. The sheet of paper is already a cutout. It's a four-part cutout, this sheet of paper. I could make many cuts. I can twist the sheet. It can become a little tube. It can become, look, spacing out a little tube, cool, a little tube of the sheet, all nice and neat. It can even become, as one guy says, a little packet, like a popcorn packet, right? The sheet is here. Fatio, why are you talking about the sheet? If this A4 sheet of paper were our universe of perception, every person who adds any kind of registration to this universe, who enters data and registers what plants are, what animals are, what people are, what women are, what men are, every registration that I put into the perception of people's being becomes a fragment, becomes a fold of what could be greater. And this sheet, which is the whole, is being cut up. Good evidence-based science will take and make so many cuts that it will create a point on the sheet, a tiny point like a tattoo, a tiny point on the sheet. Okay, but it depends on the cut I make on this sheet. This tiny point will be in function if I make the sheet turn into a little square. Fold them several times or cut them with scissors several times and turn them into a small square. Here's a rectangle, tiny, and then the scientist will make a dot, a tattoo dot. Research has to be well cut, but life is without cutting. It's all without folding. So you become flexible enough to get things back to normal. If the bend is too strong, you can't get that smooth page back again. These are beliefs and habits that are much more. Why am I saying all this? Because we're going to make a very significant cut, a cut that's an idea I have. And this idea might be flawed. So the cut is based on my idea of opening up two sides of life, functional life and structural life. When you go to an MRI, there's structural resonance. Structural resonance shows where the structure of your brain body is, how the design is, how things are in your brain. You know what your brain is like, its structure. Functional, how does the brain work? Functional, structural. You want a house structurally sound, the structure of the house, the bricks, how they're laid, everything nice and neat. And the function of the house, how do you move around inside the house once it's built? So, structure, function, it's in the very DNA. Within the DNA itself, it can also work for function or structure, the DNA inside the cell. So, we're doing what Jackson wants to do today. He wants to blend this structural and functional aspect, but I want to blend this aspect both inside the cell and out here. This is a snapshot. This is an approximation. This is an idea I have to make people's lives easier. And I'm going to focus on how I'm going to delve into DNA, something I learned, which I really liked, when I saw a lecture by Alfredo Pereira Jr. He said he didn't say Jackson to me, but he said it in the lecture. Look, life at the DNA level is proteins controlling the flow of water here and there. Yes, DNA makes proteins. That's the DNA pathway. But DNA has two ways of acting. It can act to go to the more functional or structural parts. Interesting. And I've talked quite a bit to you about mTOR. When mTOR is activated, it focuses more on building, creating, and structuring. When it's deactivated, it focuses on coordinating. How the house works, the structure of the house, and how you move inside the house, the structural part of the house, and how you move inside the house, that part of the DNA the functional part, and the little switch that activates this is mTOR. So when you start building a bit more structurally, there's something that's mTOR C1, which is structural, and the functional one is mTOR C2. Why did you say all that? Remember that thing about fasting and ketogenic diets and things like that? Well, it's more or less that, okay? When the DNA, when the hematopoietic stem cell is deactivated, it will interfere with cellular functions. It will almost perform an autophagy of the cell itself. It will check cellular functions. These internal cellular functions don't affect the structure. If you talk to a nutritionist, they'll tell you something like, look, there's something called protein. Proteins are more involved in the function and not in the structure. The structure is proteins, but when broken down, it goes into collagen. which is broken down peptides. But look what I want to do today. I don't want to get into nutrition, but I just want you to know, look, there are things that the cell does to build itself, to duplicate itself. There are things it does to function. And these things are done in the DNA itself. DNA is like that. It's a structure. Our intelligence is our DNA, and when it's alive, it's duplicating itself. In this structure of a lot of code, what happens is that it does something. They go there and look for an MRI, a copy of the DNA, and this copy of the DNA is activated and becomes a protein. Look, DNA is speaking, expressing itself. So it's this function, which is a function for the structure, a function for the structure, which is precisely where you'll get more collagen. If you were to have a diet rich in collagen, you'd have a diet that's mostly chicken, cartilage. So you're going into the structure. If you focus on the more functional aspects, then no, it leans a little more towards meat, fish, milk, eggs, okay? It goes more towards the functional part. In terms of function, meats, milk, eggs, okay? And in terms of structures, collagen, oxtail, chicken feet, bone broth, okay? You noted one thing for structure, another thing for internal, and I also linked them, okay? So it's my speculation that when you go to structure, you're going to the outside, you're going to proprioception. Proprioception is structure, it's positioning, it's the structure you have outside. Interoception inward, the functional. I'll put this here. The DNA itself, it's sometimes more about interoception, proprioception. How can I talk about interoception and proprioception within a cell? It doesn't make sense, okay? It doesn't make sense. It's an extrapolation, a selection I'm making. So, for example, when you do long fasts, okay? 6 hours is a long fast. A long fast means there's no glucose outside the cells and the sensor is deactivated. So the cell activates its functional mode. At that moment, it's important to have their functional foods like milk, eggs, and cheese are good, but you're fasting, that's fine. But the cell's function will seek those things out. And the cell rebuilds itself, it cleans itself a little. Okay, I left the blog for you all. You can look up a lot of things on the internet. There's a lot of scientific work about mTOR. It's very beautiful. When you enter it, you gain a very good awareness, like ancestral consciousness, like ancestral knowledge, the wisdom of the ancestors who fasted, who went on their walks, who defended themselves against various diseases. Today, these Amerindian ancestors come to the community, they come to our society, or society gets close to them and begins to decrease the frequency of these rituals, and diseases begin to affect them. Because these rituals of long walks, fasting, that's the essence of self healing. The body to heal itself needs space and movement. That's why I said that's when I talk about freedom of expression. And the freedom of expression I want to talk about is freedom of expression for DNA. It also acts on DNA, but more so for DNA. Freedom of expression, freedom to not have so much tension in the body. DNA is constantly being formed, changing, and structuring itself. We don't have conscious awareness of it. We have knowledge of it, the numbers and such. It's difficult for me to feel what DNA does, but I have DNA. And you can see these pathways at some point. To simplify, that's what Jackson wanted to talk about regarding DNA. Look, DNA has two things, or rather several things about DNA. The two things we're going to emphasize today are either it's working towards the body's structure or it's working towards the body's functionality, the cellular body. What is good politics and what is politics to me? Politics to me is like taking a living cell. You care for it, you feed it, you provide it with security. That's politics. When you extrapolate politics to the way it is now, you see the super rich controlling the left and right in some way, and the money isn't born in the hands of the citizens, it's born in the hands of the super rich who speculate. So that's it. The super rich profit from the state, live off the state, and say that the state is bad for everyone so they can continue living off the state and profiting from it. So this is super rich in all states. It's not just, okay, so we're talking about something important, and I mentioned politics and religiosity, and that's going to touch on today's topic. Religiosity has to do with something that releases your energies, that allows you to enter a process of completeness. Freedom of expression in the fullness of the movement, then religiosity. I like to talk about the three areas: politics, science, and religion. And in science, we're talking about DNA. So, did you notice the entirety of the movement is pure religiosity? Okay. At some point in your life, you were talking to someone, you felt a little tense, and you were about to speak. At that moment, your body experienced a slight tension that prevented you from speaking. A slight tension that prevented you from speaking, but you couldn't quite manage to say it. It caused minor muscle contractions, and you have a contraction that hasn't gone away. But when you speak, when you position yourself in two ways. You position yourself in an interoceptive and proprioceptive way. What is interoceptive? Interoceptive refers to having used your beliefs, your diet, your way of being, your way of living, and your internal visceral information. Interoception, culture and my way of being, proprioception, my projection, how I'm going to position myself with my muscles in this environment and in this situation now. And I was about to position myself, but I reversed the situation. The energy I projected, proprioceptible, the interoceptive energy, it's in my children, my ideas. It has a part of the brain, it has a visceral part, it potentiates, it tenses some viscera to position me with this energy that I was going to talk about. And the proposal of having bodily opposition wasn't it is, but it already was. It wasn't, but it already happened. Jackson, what's that like? The visceral tension, the tension of your beliefs, the ideas you were going to talk about, it got stuck in your throat, it wouldn't come out, and your body positioned itself and it didn't come out. I call this anergy. Anergy, it's not energy because energy you have and release energy, you become trapped here in the stomach, here in the head, in the brain, somewhere something remained, an energy that doesn't metabolize, that remains stagnant. And we're talking about freedom of expression, the completeness of movement. How can we release it? If I don't release this energy through a certain bodily movement, it gets stuck and your life becomes more tense. And with your life becoming more stressful, you tend to puff out your chest more. Your chest expands and your breathing becomes more thoracic because you're more defensive. When the process makes you more defensive, I don't know if you remember that I told you about an evoked potential called MMM. What they're talking about is the M mistake, right? Yes, it's an error detection process that the brain performs. And look, it detected the error, detected it, and corrected it. So when you're more defensive, your breathing becomes more thoracic. Your breathing tends to be a little shorter, and your heart rate becomes like this, faster. And the RR interval hardly varies. So that thing I'm talking about, the RMSSD, stays short. It doesn't get long, it decreases. There's not much variation between one heartbeat and the next. And you see a little clock. Up to that point, it might be a very good function for a specific task you're undertaking. But the MLM by ship, Maria ship, this MMMN has a problem. If you are very tense, he detects the error but doesn't correct it. Oh boy, that just makes things way too complicated. How can you detect the error and not correct it? Yes, it detects it because you're tense. How does that work in practice, Jackson? A practical example. Look, the NMM happens in fractions of a second, so it's not something we're consciously aware of or metacognitive about, a feeling of the NMM. We, through scientific experiments, begin to make inferences about it, but a good thing, and a long time ago I read, a long time ago I think, man, I think it's emotional intelligence. I think that's it. I read about it a long time ago, and this example is good. It was there, and I'll bring it to you. You're in a place. How does NMN work? You take a second and divide it into 10 parts. To simplify, again, the division. The division is for you to learn. The division isn't meant to be, it's for learning. Because the world and life are without divisions. It's a whole. Classification, logic, belief, habits are divisions within a whole. You do this to live in this biome. In another one, it's useless, unnecessary. It's another division. So, okay, I'm taking a second and dividing it into 10 parts to talk about MMN. The first part, MMN detects an error. For example, I'm walking and suddenly I felt my heart race. I felt my heart race because I saw a copy. The first tenth. So the first tenth is a part, a tenth of a second. It passes, then it would be like this: 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. No, 300 milliseconds. Whoops. It's not a snake, it's a drawing. I corrected in milliseconds. At 400, I'm already like, look, she charges me at 500 or 600 milliseconds, starts laughing. And around 700, 800 milliseconds, I even laugh at my mistake because I saw it, I felt it, my heart raced, and I realized at 300 and 400 milliseconds that it wasn't that and that I corrected it. MMN, evoked potential being corrected. What you detected incorrectly wasn't a complete misperception. You detected it because your heart had already started beating faster. You thought it was a snake, but within 300 milliseconds, you corrected yourself. No, it's not a snake. Why did you start correcting it already? Because you weren't very tense. Because if you were very tense or had a lot of energy, you weren't going to correct it. You found the mistake, the snake was there, and you just kept piling it off and didn't even realize it wasn't a snake anymore. That's basic, right? Take a social network, the hate social networks, where there's a lot of anger. It's just look at the snake, it's the snake, look, and you don't correct it. Nobody will check if it's true or not. It's no longer corrected. So you simply develop cognitive rigidity on top of that. It restructures and crystallizes beliefs, faith. It cuts life into such tiny pieces that it becomes impossible to live because of so much pain. And MLM will detect error, and won't correct the errors. The world is bad, everything is getting worse. It's precisely your attention. Okay, we've arrived at the point of today's live stream. How can we release these tensions from the body? We need to make a movement that helps you regain balance, that releases these tensions. Now, for example, I spoke with you, I simulated something, I created tension in my back. These tensions with rapid contraction, you know, they'll go there and you need to massage them. But there are tensions that don't actually hurt, so there's no signal in the body that you have extra tension. It simply has accumulated energy. What we're going to try to do now, and I pass this on to you, is I told you guys how to do it via WhatsApp, and we're going to do it. Energy is the first thing we're going to do. What's cool is that you're going to try to make space inside of spaces for movement so that energy can flow out, because that energy, that thing you wanted to move during the day but didn't, is there. It's in your viscera, it's in your body structure. So why not do some movements? For example, first thing, open up spaces. You're going to try to do it in one place. Breathe deeply, exhale deeply, and breathe as deeply as possible. If your breathing is very thoracic, breathe a little more directly into your chest and exhale very gently. Breathe in slowly and exhale slowly. Then you have some space. In that space, your heart rate tends to lengthen, become longer, have more space, and your breathing tends to go a little more towards your abdomen. At this moment, look how interesting this is. You can be standing, preferably standing. While standing, you do the following. You can make a circle. And it's inside the circus, but not on the edge of the circus, but inside the circus. And then you stand up with both feet bare, planted, feet on the ground, well balanced. You're going to do it like this. See, stand up slowly, very slowly, like you're rocking a baby. In that little circle, you have that little circle. You find your balance so you don't break the cycle, your little balance within the cycle. Your abdomen starts to contract. It contracts as if you were rocking a baby. That contraction that was hard, that sometimes had a tension, a very strong energy in the abdomen. Whoa, hold on, you're rocking. The abdomen is a muscle that now won't be afraid, because this contraction that I'm doing and shaking, it's safe. There, I've softened the abdomen, but still below the navel, which is why the solar plexus is there. A lot of energy accumulates there. Even so, you can turn your body completely to the right, completely to the right. Breathe very slowly, without forcing, without stretching, because when you stretch and feel a little pain, you contract again, the energy stays. So you go all the way to the right, then you contract, the solar plexus becomes more polarized, you release it again all the way to the left. Release the middle again, you can swing a little more, you're swinging yourself and you're causing the internal energy structures and external musculature to release, to loosen, to express themselves. Do you understand? That's very interesting, but there's another little muscle that's really cool. Here's the thing, you can loosen him up a little bit too. You know, the position like a cat, you bend over quite a bit and adjust your waist as if you were picking up a suitcase. You have to adjust your waist, right? And there's a musician there called Pessoa. Pessoa, this person grabs the spine down there, all in the lumbar region. And this musician usually gets very tense. He gets scared, ready to do a quick contraction, you understand? And then you're going to do it and you do a movement in your waist to engage your hips, but relax, bend your body completely forward, then bend your whole body backward while still standing, and it goes back forward. You made a basic movement, you made a rotational movement, you made a movement of, here you can do it in the muscle. But it's not about stretching. The goal isn't to stretch. You have to complete the movement. These are movements you wanted to do during the day, but you left them unfinished. They were just drained from your body's energy, and you're simply going to complete them. Without knowing what the movement was, you're going to complete it. And that energy will come out, sometimes in a hot shower, which is great, right? Don't linger in a hot shower. But look, you do this and it's not stretching, it's you seeing your different spaces, lengthening your breath, making movements that maybe you wanted to do that day but stopped halfway through. And by stopping halfway through, an energy gets blocked in the interoception of your body or in the varioception of your body. Okay, when this doesn't come out, doesn't come out, doesn't come out, and accumulates in one, then another, what will happen? It's becoming a interoceptive and proprioceptive. They're not talking to each other. And then the tension and energy becomes so great, and there's the energy of that person, of that other person, of those masses, until an artist comes along and breaks through. Like that guy who just did at the Super Bowl, the guy called Bad Bunny. The Bad Bunny went there and did an opening act, showed it at a show at the Super Bowl. He went there and showed movement, body, sexualized or not, all the movements, the completeness, you form the whole movement. And speech, expression is important, freedom of expression and completeness of movement without shyness, just let it all out. And it was released. And the way the population starts to look at this and see in the artist an option for this energy to come out. So when our energies don't come out, we're going to need artists. We want more artists expressing more of what we feel and can't express with our movements, of course. But these small movements I told you about, relax, okay? Shoulder. Your abdomen rotates to one side, then to the other. Ah, shake your abdomen. But like you're rocking a baby and relaxing. And in your psoas muscle, relax the psoas, make a forward movement, bend your whole body forward, bend your whole body backward. Let your body express itself. When your body has space for these movements, it becomes freer, or you enter zone two, which is a zone of functionality, of plasticity. Your body will resolve itself, it will seek solutions. Having space, the body regulates itself. And by regulating yourself, the M&M's take will give you the high, look at the snake. No, it's not a snake, it's just a stain on the floor. Because you're okay, you correct mistakes. The world doesn't become wrong because you correct the mistake you perceive. Guys, this is the idea I wanted to leave you with, and this mix that even the structured and functional things in life also occur within cells. There are things that cells use for structure, to create structure. When mTOR is activated, it structures itself, it releases DNA, it duplicates. And when it's deactivated, it will perform autophagy, it will regulate functions, it will improve its own plasticity. But I'm talking at the brain level. If you enhance the entire system, it will also occur at the brain level. Plasticity will only occur when you are in zone two, breathing slowly, in a pleasant state of belonging and security. And not with fear, because with fear you will become destabilized. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next Wednesday.